Major funding for this program was provided by the James S. McDonnell Foundation, supporting significant programs in education, research to improve the quality of human life, and global understanding. Additional funding was provided by the National Science Foundation, agencies of the United States Public Health Service, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, a catalyst for change, by this station and other public television stations, and by Control Data, computer products and services for science, engineering, and business. Control Data.
In one sentence, I can give you the secret to the 9-part series we now begin. The mind is what the brain does. Now you know the conclusion of the program you're about to see. But having said that, I must confess I've told you nothing. The object of our quest, the human mind, defies punchlines. It's easy to say that our minds depend solely on our brains, and that our brains are the most complex organs in the universe. But a simple definition would be wrong, if only because of what it leaves out. Far better to conceive of the mind's infinity. Herman Melville once wrote, "Not the smallest atom stirs or lives on matter, but has its cunning duplicate in mind." In the Melville tradition, we therefore propose a journey. We begin at Lascaux in France, in a cave some consider the cradle of the human mind. Our guides, artist Jonathan Kenworthy and anthropologist Donald Johanson.
It's almost as if you're walking into the past and having an opportunity to look at the world of 17,000 years ago through the eyes of the people who actually lived then.
Yes, that's right. And in the most potent way possible. He's taking us through the world that he saw, through the creatures that he hunted, into the very innermost part of his mind, isn't he?
No question. I think that all of it represents something that must have been tremendously important in terms of their lives.
Yeah. And I love to think of him sort of sitting here in the cave with these flickering lights playing over the surface of the rocks. And he's used the rocks, he's used the shapes of the rocks, the contours that the rocks naturally make, to begin his animals. You see, there's the belly of a horse.
Oh, yes. Almost as if she's pregnant.
Yes, and it's following the contour that the rock creates. So he's really, it's like us looking at clouds and seeing faces. So he's painted the belly of his horse there, and then he's filled in the rest of the horse. And then where that horse's head goes up into the hump of that bull, he's used the two together so that the two contours can form together. It's the most marvelous form of stylization.
In fact, the way they portrayed them with the light flickering on them, it's almost as if they're moving, almost as if they're alive.
Well, they were to them, and in the same way they are to us, aren't they?
You know, Jonathan, one has the feeling that what the artist was trying to do was portray the real excitement of the hunt.
Yes, and in the way that he does this, in this extremely fine way that he paints it, he's found a permanent way of handing on his feelings.
The most complete clue to the emergence of modern mind lies not so much here, but 100 feet below in a small, tortuous nook, where 17,000 years ago, early man left the only picture of himself in these caves.
For me, this is perhaps one of the most provocative compositions in all of Upper Paleolithic art, because I think it provides a really profound insight into the mind of Cro-Magnon. It's obviously a hunting accident. This hunter has speared a bison. And you can see the entrails coming out of that bison. The spear is on the ground, broken. The bison, angry, has turned and charged and killed the man. You can see him falling over. And my interpretation is that perhaps this hunter was initiated into hunting here at Lascaux. And the shaman or the priest who was responsible for him came back to the cave, went to a hidden part of the cave, down here in the well, and drew this figure. A very simple figure, one with a peculiar head. As you can see, it's almost like a bird's head. And if you look down here, you see a bird's head, a bird perched right on a stick. Perhaps this was the totem of this young man.
Yes, I'm sure that's right. I'm sure that was a reporting of an actual incident. And here's the first man that we see in the whole of these caves. I mean, just think of all those wonderful images that we've seen, that we've been and looked at. And here's man. And he's a pipe cleaner figure. Why? I mean, there aren't many men in all the caves, are there? Why, I ask myself. That's the main question. Why doesn't he draw himself? And I think it's at this stage of his thinking. His mind was in what he saw, not in what he was. He was seeing himself through the things that he admired, through the things that he enjoyed looking at, through the things that he survived by. It's the creatures that reveal his mind for us. To him, there was no problem. He didn't have to look at himself. He was himself. And that was the important thing in his world.
So out of the darkness of pre-recorded history emerged this extraordinary organ, the human brain. It yielded the human mind, which has a unique quality, the ability to be conscious of self, the ability to understand one's place on the planet and in time. Why is it that this creature, sharing 99% of our genetic material, never painted on the walls of caves, never built cathedrals or formed a judicial system? After all, its brain, while smaller, shows remarkable physical similarities to the human brain. What indeed can we learn from the behavior of the chimpanzee, our closest relative, that helps us to understand the true measure of the human mind? Ever since 1960, Jane Goodall has been attempting to answer just that question. While her study has taught us much about the behavior of the chimp, it has also helped us understand the roots of the mind.
I'll never ever forget the first really exciting discovery, which was that chimpanzees not only use tools in the wild, but also make them, modify an object to make it suitable for a specific purpose. And that was when I saw David Greybeard fishing for termites in November 1960. So that was very soon after the study began, in fact. When Louis Leakey first heard that the Gombe chimpanzees were not only using but actually making tools, he was really excited, because up to that time we had defined humans as man the tool maker. And so Louis said, well, obviously now we must either redefine tool, redefine man, or accept chimpanzees as humans.
Soon after observing chimps making tools, Jane Goodall noticed other overlaps. Chimps communicated in a number of ways remarkably similar to our own. Their society, constantly forming and reforming, meeting and parting, is a striking reflection of the dynamic quality of our society. And in 1974, Goodall discovered that chimps share with us a dark side to their natures. They, like us, are capable of annihilating other societies of their own species. They, like us, wage war. But the most consistent social behavior in chimp society is social grooming, a metaphor for commonplace behavior among humans.
It's probably a little bit like a couple of blokes having a drink together in the bar and chatting about nothing in particular, just maintaining their friendship when they've been separated for a while.
A society characterized by strong ties of friendship, a society in which mother and child may continue their bonds throughout life. A society, therefore, much like our own. What then are the dissimilarities between the chimpanzee mind and the human mind?
Well, if I'm asked what the difference is, the real crucial difference between chimpanzees and humans, I would say without doubt from my own perspective that it's because humans have developed a spoken language. Chimpanzees can be taught certain types of languages in the labs, and they can learn signs and symbols and string them together and communicate meaningfully, but they haven't developed their own spoken language. And this frees humans from the present. It enables us to discuss the past and learn from it. It enables us to make meaningful plans, not only for the immediate future, which even a chimp can do, but for next year or in 10 years' time. It enables us to pass on traditions and cultures to our children about types of behavior or objects which are not present, because we can talk about them, we can explain them. And in this way, we are completely and utterly different from the chimpanzees, and always shall be, I believe.
5,000 miles away in England, author, zoologist, and artist Desmond Morris has been grappling with these same difficult questions.
For the last 40 years, I have been trying, in my paintings, to evolve a subjective private world of my own, populated with organisms which are not related on a one-to-one basis with the outside world. They are invented organisms, but they do parallel the outside world, and in that sense, they are making use of a very special quality of the human brain, which is that quality that we have for symbolism, for making a symbolic equation, for making A stand for B. It's one of our strongest qualities as a species.
30 years ago, Desmond Morris started applying his notions of human art to an unlikely and very playful subject, a 3-year-old chimpanzee called Congo.
To my surprise, not only did Congo become very excited about the business of making pictures, but indeed he screamed if you tried to stop him in the middle of a picture. Furthermore, he was upset if you tried to get him to go on with the picture when he had finished it. This is one of Congo's best paintings. It's hard to believe this is a picture by a chimpanzee because it's so well composed. It's, of course, an abstract scribble, if you want to be rude about it, because chimpanzees never developed any pictorial symbolism. But if you look at it, you'll see that it does have a rhythm and a balance about it. There's a patch of blue here and another patch of blue here. And it also shows the development of a theme, because Congo's favorite theme is a fan-shaped pattern. You can see the lines of this radiating fan here. And he liked to do that right across the picture. But then, having got this fan pattern, he developed variations on that theme, and one of them was the subsidiary fan. That miniature fan echoes the big fan. And in that sense, Congo had developed an aesthetic concept and was then playing with it. One of the things I learned by studying chimpanzee painting was that although chimpanzees are much closer to us than some people would like to admit, that we are nevertheless somehow or other over a whole new threshold into a whole new world, because the human mind had become just that little bit more complicated than the chimpanzee's mind. But it was just enough to take us not 10 degrees further, but 1,000,000 degrees further, because we passed over a threshold into an area where we could, for example, sit down, close our eyes, and think for 2 hours. And at the end of that 2 hours, when we opened our eyes, apparently having done nothing, but at the end of that 2 hours, we were different people.
Symbolism, self-reflection, introversion, qualities that apply mostly to humans. When, in the course of human evolution, did they appear? Anthropologist Richard Leakey.
Those parts of the brain that are associated with consciousness, self-awareness, the capacity to self-reflect, have clearly developed over time. And if you could find all the stages in the development of our species, you would have a very difficult job drawing the line. I would think that Homo habilis 1.8, 1.9 million years ago probably was more self-conscious, conscious of self, would perhaps be a better term, than is a chimpanzee, but nonetheless less conscious of self than perhaps we are today.
But how does being conscious of self affect the higher primate? What advantages do we have over our ancestors? Nicholas Humphrey.
For my money, the one thing which makes human beings different from all other animals on Earth is their capacity for forming social relationships, for getting along with their fellow human beings. And to do that, they require the ability to be psychologists. They have to have a way of predicting and understanding the behavior of other members of their own species. How do they do that? They do it by employing a mental model which makes use continually of the kind of information we get when we look in on our own minds with the inner eye of consciousness and see our own minds as being composed of desires, wills, emotions, sensations, and so on. It gives us a conceptual framework for understanding other human beings.
Self-reflection is the inner eye of consciousness, an aspect of mind we take for granted. For Ed, however, this process is impaired. He lacks a normal understanding of human emotions and desires, and his life tells us just how vital this quiet function of the mind really is.
Then before that, I had the black Naishiki Sport, a 12-speed. I've had that bike for 8 months, from May 20th earlier this year, or May 20th, 1987, since September 10th, 1986. And then before that, I had the Blue Campus Sport. And the Blue Campus Sport I had for 2 years and 3 months, from September 10th, 1986, since June 1984. Then before the Blue Campus Sport, I had the silver Naishiki 10-speed. And I've had that bike for 2 years and 4 months, from June 1984 since February 1982. I go traveling mostly on Saturdays.
Like clockwork, Ed takes a weekly bike trip. Following a Chamber of Commerce map, his rule is to visit everything alphabetically. A towns, then B towns, and in each, stores, one by one in alphabetical order. He's now at sea.
I'm going to see Captain's Galley in Chula Vista.
Ed's hard and fast rule is that he's only allowed to look at one place per week. While he may have ridden 3 hours just to see Captain's Galley, he'll not allow himself even a peek at the dockside deli next door. He'll return next week to see that.
I saw the Broadway liquor store last Saturday. I went to the Bow Bar liquor store on the Saturday before that.
And what does he do at each of these stops? Ed will stare at the Broadway liquor store for all of 2 minutes. Then he'll cross it off his map and set off on the 3-hour journey home. Ed is not retarded in the classical sense. Indeed, in many respects, he functions at a high level. Ed is autistic. What he lacks is the ability to ascribe meaning and purpose to people and places. And to make up for this deficiency, he's filled his life with lists of his own making, lists that have become the structure of his life.
The purpose of my trips is to visit different places.
What autistic people seem to be doing in social interactions is only the tip of the iceberg. In fact, what they do all the time, social interactions and in every other interaction with the world, is they're recording as faithfully as they can what they see and what they hear and what they feel, making up lists of these things, making up sets of rules of these things, collecting pieces of unconnected information, saving those.
I worked at a bicycle shop because I'd want to drive around more and more bikes.
I've never met anybody who can concentrate on a job from start to finish like Ed can. It's incredible. I just, not look up until it's done. It's the way he is. We only run into a problem if there is a unforeseen complication, a lost nut or bolt, for example. Every time he runs into a new situation, he has to be instructed how to handle it. But once he's shown, he never forgets. He's real good at that.
If there was a bike to be assembled and I was going to put that together, after I complete assembling that bike, then I can ride it around.
I think that Edward's autism is basically his inability to relate socially to other people. He has many skills and he's learned a lot of socialization, but he doesn't have any spontaneous type of relating to other people. He's not going to initiate a conversation, even if he's particularly interested in something. He would never ask you, "How are you?" for instance. He would respond if you asked him how he was, but other people have to do the prodding and the questioning.
What's your personality like?
My personality is how I sometimes like being off by myself when I go places and do things.
He seems to go through life week after week after week, trying to hold on to a sameness. He never asks for anything. If we didn't take him to a baseball game, or take him out to dinner, or take him other places that he will go, and he readily goes and seems to enjoy it. But if we didn't take him, he wouldn't initiate any social behavior at all. He would sit in his room, look at his maps, listen to his radio, and talk to himself.
For a long time, autism was thought to be a disorder that was psychological in origin, created by the parenting styles. We now know that that's not true. We now know that autism is a disorder involving damage to the nervous system.
Recent studies show that the brains of most autistic patients have defects. One is in the unlikeliest of all places, in the cerebellum, a region not normally linked to higher brain function. Such defects may show that the normal mind depends on a fully intact, fully integrated, fully functioning brain. And so autism underscores the fundamental relationship between brain and mind, that specific damage to the brain is reflected in a mind ill-equipped to assign meanings and motives to others.
Autism means to be different from other people.
The way that I think of the mind is not as a separate kind of thing or an arena, but rather as the sequence of thoughts and feelings and experiences and so-called mental phenomena that go on in us. Mind is the name of a process, not a thing. Now, that process is entirely caused by physiological events in the brain, and it goes on in the brain. It's not something mysterious that stands outside of the natural world. It's just part of our ordinary biological life. It includes thoughts and feelings and experiences and dreams and pains and tickles and itches, all of those things that we think of as part of our mental life. Now, that's what I mean by mind. That's the mind, insofar as a thing called the mind. It's just, that expression is just a name for that sequence of processes going on in the brain. But we've got to, let me just go on about this a little bit. We got to demystify that. I mean, we have this tradition that makes that seem, wow, that's pretty spooky stuff. But there's nothing spooky about it. It's just part of the world we live in. It's part of our biological life. The only thing is, it's what matters to us most about our biological life. I mean, we can give up our thumbs, or in a pinch, even our eyes. But if we give up our consciousness, that's it. We're dead.
The struggle to understand the meaning, purpose, and mechanics of our minds is as old as civilization itself. One student of this great search, Professor Daniel Robinson.
The search for mind begins with philosophy, and philosophy begins in ancient Greece. The first time in human history when men recognized that knowledge was not the simple product of experience, but something that had to be analyzed, externalized, examined as if it were like any other phenomenon of nature, and treated as a subject worthy of study in its own right.
The Greek philosopher Aristotle concluded that the human mind operated under a different set of principles than anything else on earth. He thought that the human mind existed independently of the body, and so only we had a rational mind, Only we had the capacity to abstract. Only we could ground our lives in law. In addition, while our brains might physically resemble animal brains, our minds were unique. Thus did Aristotle introduce dualism into the search for mind.
We're so in awe of Aristotle for his achievements in philosophy and logic that we tend to overlook the great contributions he made as a biologist. He was a masterful anatomist. He was one of the founders of pathology, constantly concerned with the behavior of animals. He'd have Alexander the Great's troops send specimens back from all over the conquered world. And in fact, when you look at this part of Aristotle's record and the books he wrote around these interests, he would qualify as arguably one of the greatest biologists of all time. But in this, he would have to surrender pride of place to the man who lived here, in this house, Charles Darwin, author of the theory of evolution, a theory that has radically transformed our perspective on ourselves and the world in which we live. It wasn't Origin of Species that was really the controversial work. It was the 1871 book, Descent of Man, that caused great turmoil. And it's in that book that Darwin's psychology is developed for the first time. Darwin's search for mind culminates in his own theory of evolution, and he discovers that, in fact, the human mind is but a residual, something evolving out of an animal past, with properties that can be found elsewhere in the animal kingdom.
The effect of Darwin's Descent of Man was to reject Aristotle's clear separation of the rational mind of man from the mental life of animals. According to Darwin, the father of evolution, the human mind was part of a continuum, embracing both animals and humans. Our minds had evolved, therefore, by adapting to environments. In all likelihood, Darwin's provocative theory was destined to be left at just that, a theory.
All that changed, and it changed just about at the beginning of the 20th century as a result of the fascinating, compelling, and indeed entirely unexpected theories of a man who spent the final days of his life in this house in Hampstead, Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, arguably the most important psychologist who ever lived. This is the library in Freud's house, the house he brought his family in 1938 to escape persecution by the Nazis. It's a wonderfully complete and rich library, a testimony to his wide and deep interests. Here's one of the volumes from the complete works of Charles Darwin, the German edition of 1875. Darwin powerfully influenced Freud's thinking as he influenced the thinking of so many young scientists in Freud's generation. And over here, of course, is the famous chair and sofa. When Freud gave up the use of hypnosis, he moved the chair around to the side so that he could sit behind the patient, and the patient, through free association and depth interviews, could lay bare the salient features of unconscious life. Well, the question is whether this is the best arrangement for conducting a search for mind.
For Freud, the search for mind began with the uncovering of repressed sexuality, repressed hostility, repressed yearnings evolving from our animal past.
But of course, human beings, unlike the balance of the animal economy, must function within a society, within a civilization. And so these instinctual tendencies have to be regulated. They've got to be socialized and brought under control. And so there is an eternal war between the instinctual, animalistic, I might say Darwinian side of our nature, and the socialized and civilized side of our nature.
Thanks in large part to Sigmund Freud, today we accept that many higher processes, thinking, learning, creating, and simply living, are powered by unconscious processes of mind, instincts, desires, memories, and reactions, hidden from our consciousness. Today, this study of the unconscious continues on two different levels.
When I say ready, I want you to be alert, attentive. Don't blink your eyes until I say blink. Ready?
The word fear was just flashed in front of you and the subject in this experiment. In all likelihood, you didn't notice it, but almost certainly your mind saw it and responded. It was flashed to you subliminally.
Subliminal refers to any stimulus which is presented so quickly, let's say if it were visual, or it could be auditory, so low that the person cannot experience it consciously. Nevertheless, there are various ways of demonstrating that it enters the mind, that it is processed by the brain, and can have certain effects on the person's thinking and feelings.
Howard Chevron's object in this experiment is to come to grips scientifically with the Freudian concept of the unconscious. This college student suffers from a fear of talking in class, a fear Dr. Chevron believes derives from his unconscious conflict in appearing wild and disrespectful. Indeed, the words wild and disrespectful are flashed before him subliminally at 1,000th of a second. The electrical activity at the surface of his brain tells a fascinating story. At the top, a brief stroke indicating when the word wild was flashed subliminally. Below, 1/4 of a second later, the brain responds with a sharp burst of activity. Here, the evidence suggests, the brain reacts directly and immediately. Now, when the charged word wild is flashed slowly enough to be seen, the effect is totally different. On the top line, the notch indicates the word has been flashed. On the bottom line, the reaction time is delayed and delayed and delayed. In fact, it takes twice as long for his brain to acknowledge the sight of the word wild.
Well, there's a very suggestive conclusion that one can reach, and that is that for some reason, when the words are presented superliminally, that is, so the subject can actually see them quite consciously, there is some kind of inhibition or delay of the brain's response to those words, which is of great interest to us from a psychoanalytic standpoint because it suggests a link to Freud's idea of repression. There is reason for this person to repress those unconscious words and their related ideas and feelings because to become conscious of them would be very, very distressing to him.
From these fine tracings, an image of our mind emerges.
Ready?
It suggests that all stimuli to our brains are first received unconsciously, then selectively filtered into consciousness. It is this filter system that takes the time.
I think that what we're trying to do is to demonstrate that what is meaningful to the mind has an existence in the brain. That isn't simply a matter of synapses. It isn't simply a matter of electrical activity or biochemical activity. That what is going on is part of the meaningful transactions of a human life.
I know the left hemisphere and right hemisphere now are working independent of each other, but you don't notice it. Now, you just kind of adapt to it. You don't have any feeling, it doesn't feel any different than it did before.
7 years ago, Joe had brain surgery to allay the effects of severe epilepsy. His surgeon cut the nerve fibers connecting his left hemisphere with his right. While the operation was a complete success, Joe's unusual case offers an extraordinary insight into the machinery of mind. This fiber system, the corpus callosum, is located midway between the two hemispheres. When it was surgically severed in Joe's brain, the transmission of information between the two hemispheres was halted. Michael Gazzaniga.
What we can do is play tricks by putting information into his disconnected, mute, non-talking right hemisphere and watch it produce behaviors. And out of that, we can really see that there is, in fact, a reason to believe that there's all kinds of complex processes going on outside of his conscious awareness of his left half brain. Joe, I'm going to show you some things. I just want you to tell me what you see. And here we go. You ready? Look right at the dot.
Okay.
Right. Okay, you ready? Look right at the dot.
Grapes.
Good. When Joe focuses on a point, everything to the right of the point goes to his left brain, the dominant hemisphere for language and speech. So we can see here that when we flash a word or a picture, Joe is easily able to name it.
See it.
Close your eyes and let your left hand do a little work here. Okay, what do you got there?
Pan.
Okay, very good. Now, when a word or a picture falls to the left of a fixation point, that information goes to his disconnected right half brain. And as we can see here, Joe is unable to name it. Joe is able to draw the picture with his left hand, the left hand getting its major control from the right half brain. Where'd you go?
Okay.
What'd you see?
Wheel. One side. I don't know where I saw it.
So even though he can't name it, his left hand is able to draw out the picture of the stimulus, of the picture or word that we presented to his right half brain. What did you see?
Saw a hammer.
So just close your eyes and draw with your left hand. Just let it go. That's nice. What's that?
Saw.
Yeah. What'd you see?
Hammer.
What'd you draw that for?
I don't know.
What we have with Joe is just a dramatic example of a neurologic case that really allows you this window into the non-conscious and how powerful non-conscious processes are at influencing our conscious self, our personal self. What Joe and patients like him, and there are many of them, teaches us is that the mind is made up of a constellation of independent, semi-independent agents, and that these agents, these processes can carry on a vast number of activities outside of our conscious awareness. Even though that goes on, there's some final stage or some final system, which I happen to think is in the left hemisphere, that pulls all of this information together into a theory. It has to generate a theory to explain all of these independent elements. And so, and that theory becomes our particular theory of ourself and of the world.
This unconscious of ours may have earned an undeserved reputation as being at the heart of the dark side of our personalities. Quite the contrary, it could account for some of humanity's greatest triumphs.
I think what the caveman was doing in Lascaux is exactly what I'm doing now. He went out and looked and saw and absorbed. And when he produced again those emotional responses that he had to what he'd seen, he was drawing out of himself not images that were the same as the creatures that he'd seen. In other words, he wasn't drawing those creatures. What he was drawing were his feelings about the creatures. And that's exactly what I do 17,000 years later. I go on safari in Africa. And I look at a herd of wildebeest. I look at leopard, cheetah, lion, whatever it is that interests me at the moment, and I draw those creatures in front of me. Now, in this respect, I'm different to ancient man, because I'm now trying to record, at the moment when I draw, what I see. That's a very curious kind of drawing. It's a stumbling, fumbling line where I'm trying to get the animal down. When I come back into my studio, what I do is a completely different thing, and in this case, I'm the same as the caveman. I'm producing a line which is no longer a stumbling line, but it's a concise line, and it brings out in front of me not any longer the creature I saw, but my feelings about the creature I saw. So you're starting with a sense of something in your mind, with a vision in the past. It could be as much as 2 years ago that you saw what you're now recreating. When you are concentrated, there is no feeling of anything except what is going on in front of you. There's no sense of the mind working. There's no sense of your taking tangible ideas from here or there. There's no sense even of your hands operating. I mean, if you actually looked at your hands, you wouldn't be looking at what you were doing. If you actually sensed that this or that was happening at the end of your fingertips, they wouldn't be operating right. You get this tremendous surge of excitement as a thing begins to arrive in front of you. And that's all you're conscious of at the very best moments. Art is only the material process of bringing out of the mind the pictures that are dwelling in it.
And what now about that other facet of mind, consciousness?
Well, the proof of consciousness is the fact that each of us is conscious. Now, if somebody comes to me and says, well, look, actually, scientific investigation reveals that you're not conscious, I don't think, well, gee, you know, maybe this guy's right. Maybe I'm totally unconscious. It must be a fantastic science that can get such a super result. I think this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And there's a very important fact about consciousness that this reveals, and namely, that where consciousness is concerned, you can't make the standard appearance-reality distinction that we make for the rest of the world. That is, if the scientist tells me, look, that the table isn't really solid because it appears to be solid, but it's really composed of a cloud of microparticles. Or if the scientist tells me the sun looks like it sets, but it doesn't really set, it's just an illusion created by the rotation of the Earth on its axis, I can accept both of those because I can see how there's a distinction between appearance and reality. But where the existence of consciousness is concerned, there can't be any such bifurcation. Because where the existence of consciousness is concerned, the appearance is the reality. There's no way that some guy can come to me and convince me you're not conscious. If I think I'm conscious, I am conscious.
Do you know how we got here?
No.
You don't remember sitting down?
No.
I reckon we've been here about 10 minutes at least.
Well, I've no knowledge of it. My eyes have started working now, and all I've seen the whole time I've been seeing anything at all is that.
And do you feel absolutely normal?
Not absolutely normal, no. Completely confused.
Confused?
Yes. If you've never eaten anything, never tasted anything, never touched anything, or smelled anything, what right have you to assume you're alive?
But you are?
Well, apparently, yes. But I'd like to know what the hell's been going on.
Clive was an outstanding musician.
He would take his work very, very seriously. At the same time, he loved music so much that he just really threw himself into it totally.
Clive was a musician of enormous integrity.
He was the world's expert on lassos, one of the 3 or 4 great composers of the Renaissance.
And he also worked a great deal in contemporary music and was chorus master of the London Sinfonietta, which is Europe's foremost group.
Music flows out of him, whether he's singing or playing or conducting.
Clive Waring, through a cruel twist of fortune, shows us how fundamental consciousness and memory are to our lives.
Well. No surprise. It's a smashing surprise. Why have I not seen you before?
I don't know. Have you not seen me before?
No. This is the first time.
Are you pleased to see me?
Oh, bet I am. There's nobody else I care about in the world as a whole.
Oh, darling. So how are you feeling this morning?
I'm conscious for the first time. It's the first time I've seen anybody at all.
Not been conscious before? No. I've been here before this morning.
I haven't seen you before.
No, you haven't?
No. I've not seen anything at all before. Been completely blind the whole time.
Mm.
No taste, so this is the first taste I've had.
That's the first coffee you've had?
Yes. Cheers.
Cheers. And how are you seeing things?
Absolutely normally. The first time.
Full colour?
Yes. I've never seen anything the whole time I've been ill. No black and white, nothing.
Do you remember me arriving?
No. I don't remember any arrival at all. I don't remember writing any of that at all. Nothing to do with me consciously. I mean, unconscious writing.
What are you doing here?
Well, I don't know, presumably playing patience, but I mean, that's the first time I've seen any cards.
Is it?
Yes.
Do you remember starting the game? It all started with a headache. Clive came home one day and said he had a very bad headache. The headache didn't lift, it didn't respond to analgesics. By the 4th day, he developed quite a high fever. And on the evening of the 4th day, for a little while, he forgot his daughter's name. By the 5th day, he was very delirious.
Clive suffered from viral encephalitis, which has led to the damage of the left and the right temporal lobes, plus a good portion of the left frontal lobe. Now, the temporal lobes contain a structure called the hippocampus, which we know is implicated in memory function, and in Clive it has almost certainly been completely destroyed in both sides of his brain. It's this that is primarily responsible for his severe memory impairment. In addition, The damage to his frontal lobes also causes a number of additional memory problems, which are manifest mostly in terms of him repeating himself a lot and generally showing highly emotional behaviour.
Clive's world now consists of a moment with no past to anchor it and no future to look ahead to. It is a blinkered moment. He sees what is right in front of him, but as soon as that information hits the brain, it fades. Nothing makes an impression, nothing registers. Everything goes in perfectly well because he has all his faculties, his intellect is virtually intact, and he perceives his world as you or I do. But as soon as he's perceived it and looked away, it's gone for him. So it's a moment-to-moment consciousness, as it were, of a time vacuum. And everything before that moment is completely void. And he feels as if he's awakening afresh the whole time.
Lovely handiwork. Beautiful, marvelous to kiss.
You're a very good mood today.
Fantastic. I'm awake for the first time. You're the first person I've seen.
It's very nice to meet you.
How has it been?
It's been about 2.5 years now, Mr. Graham.
Imagine one night, 2.5 years
Not
now.
for one moment.
That's what it's been like. Not seen anything until now. Not even anything before this game. But I've given the impression of being consciously awake. Not true.
He always thinks he's been awake for about 2 minutes. And that's why he looks at his watch all the time to record it, to record the fact, I've woken up, this is an important event, therefore I will write it down in my diary. So he writes, 11:54 a.m. I am now completely awake for the first time. And he underlines first time. Patience begins, because he's always playing patience. And the whole diary, every page, is a succession of entries saying almost the same thing, of first awakeness. And when he goes back and looks at his own entries, he doesn't acknowledge that they are genuine. He says, he knows it's his handwriting, but as far as he's concerned, he was unconscious when he wrote them. So he quite often, he'll score out what he's written before. And so his life is an ever-repeating moment of first awakening. The strongest thing in his life, I believe, and his diaries bear that out, is his love for me. And that's absolutely raw. And each time I walk into that room, it is as if it's the first time he's seen me for years.
Good heavens above! Well, darling.
Hello. You surprised to see me?
Well, the first time I've seen anybody at all. It's the first person I've seen.
You've not seen me before this morning?
No, I haven't.
I have been here. So how are you feeling this morning?
I'm conscious for the first time. It's the first time I've seen anybody at all.
Not been conscious before? No. I've been here before this morning.
I haven't seen you before.
No, you haven't?
No. I've not seen anything at all before. Been completely blind the whole time.
You don't remember me arriving at all?
No. No, I didn't remember that you were arriving at all.
No.
No idea at all.
But do you know who I am? Or do you kiss all women like that?
Of course. You know I love you. I don't kiss anybody
Yes, I
else.
do know. I do know. You've written it all over your diary. Look.
What?
I bet you that if I look to see what you've written, you haven't mentioned me on that page.
No.
You've mentioned me on this page. My first thought, I adore Deborah for eternity.
That's right.
People's entries in the diary are rubbish. What does that mean?
I've no idea.
Did you write that?
I've no conscious knowledge of it at all, no. You're showing it me now for the first time.
But is it your handwriting?
Yes, it is. But I know nothing about it at all.
So how do you think it got there?
I do. I presume the doctors don't know.
But you must...
No, I haven't. You listen to me, please, for heaven's sake. When I say no, I mean exactly that. I haven't seen the book at all till now.
No, all I'm saying...
No, that means I haven't seen it, I have no knowledge of it at all. That's all. There's no knowledge of that book at all. It's entirely new to me.
But I'm
So
only
just
saying...
use your intelligence and let's have a comment which is intelligent.
But you've put... Who would put that apart
I don't know,
from
but
you?
no. Oh, for heaven's sake, use your intelligence, for heaven's sake. I haven't read the bloody thing. Well, use your intelligence.
Clive gets extraordinarily angry. And who wouldn't? Because here you're not dealing with somebody who is demented, who is oblivious, who is gaga. You are dealing with a perfectly lucid, highly intelligent man who has been robbed of knowledge of his own life, and he feels deeply humiliated to be put in that position. Very, very frustrated that he can't grasp what's wrong with him, because even as you're telling him, he's forgetting the previous sentence.
Clive has lost a form of memory which probably distinguishes human beings perhaps from all other animals. He's lost the highest form of memory, the form of memory that enables you to relate yourself to the past and project yourself into the future. So, in a sense, he feels like a man adrift.
As far as I'm concerned, I haven't heard a note of music, seen any music, have any contact with music at all.
You're still a very good conductor and a very, very good player. And you still sing with a beautiful voice.
Well, it's completely unknown to me.
Do you think if you sat down at the
I
organ...
dread to think. That's a private thing for me. I don't know what will happen, do I?
I know, because I've heard you. And you play beautifully, still.
I haven't heard a note of music.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You know the saying, you never forget how to ride a bicycle. Well, to Clive, singing, playing, sight reading, score reading music is as automatic as riding a bicycle or eating a meal or getting dressed. It's an ingrained skill. It's something you never forget. When Clive finishes a piece, the reason he almost always goes into that sort of belching, choking, fitting convulsion is because the moment the music stops, he's let down out of what was a sort of safety net for him. Suddenly he's lost again. Whatever the damage, however devastating the damage, his being, his center, his soul, is absolutely functioning as it ever did. The very fact that he is so despairing, so much in anguish, so angry, so much in love with me, those are all real human passions. And he's showing them almost to the exclusion of everything else. All he shows us is raw human passion, straight from the heart of the mind.
And so we end where we began, at the place where consciousness and the unconscious first left their mark, where the first broad strokes of self and the world about self were left for future generations.
If the caveman walked into my studio today and started talking to me, I wouldn't understand a word he had to say. But if I look at his painting, then I have a complete area of feeling and view that I can share with him. This curious development of drawing the pictures of our minds is the most eloquent way of touching another man's mind that has ever evolved. It's a language without words, a language which links us through the whole history of mankind. If you like, it's a fellowship from one human mind to another.
The mind liberates us from the eternal present. It puts meaning and purpose into our lives and allows us the hope, not always realized, that we're making progress in this world. Mind is consciousness and the unconscious bound together. Mind is the brain fully realized. Mind is 100 billion interconnected neurons. But mind is not bound by a number. It is infinity, as you'll see in our next 8 programs. I'm George Page. In our next program, the growth of brain and the emergence of mind. Development, next on The Mind.
Major funding for this program was provided by the James S. McDonnell Foundation, supporting significant programs in education, research to improve the quality of human life, and global understanding. Additional funding was provided by the National Science Foundation, agencies of the United States Public Health Service, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, a catalyst for change, by this station and other public television stations, and by Control Data, computer products and services for science, engineering, and business. Control Data. Dr. Richard Restak has written a companion book to The Mind, published by Bantam Books. It is available in bookstores and libraries.